Good morning. Thank you for attending, and those of you that have decided to stick around. I guess I'm better at public speaking than I thought I was, because you're back for more. I'm really happy about this. Now this session is designed for, I'm designing it for people that already have a rudimentary understanding of what cryptocurrency is, how blockchain basically works. Maybe you own some already, and you're interested in a couple of issues. Number one, you want to know where it actually gets its real value. And number two, you're interested in knowing what else you can do with it. You know, what else can I do with crypto? What else can I do with blockchain? Possibly even maybe profit myself. I have created a blockchain glossary. There are a few terms that I didn't remember to put on there. This is not necessarily homework or anything, but if there are a lot of terms out there that people use that you might not understand what they are, so I just typed this up for anybody that's just kind of curious. And a lot of the terms that I use here, you can find them on that. But in any event, why don't we go ahead and get started? And the first point that I want to make is a simple fact that we just have to agree to and stand by, and that is blockchain's critics are wrong, plain and simple. Blockchain and cryptocurrency is not a scam, it is not a hustle, it is not a Ponzi, it is not a situation where all we're trying to do is find a greater fool to buy it. What we are doing is witnessing the birth of the first new asset class in living memory. We have to go back to mercantilism to find a revolution on this scale. For example, this fella here is Jamie Dimon. He is the CEO of JP Morgan. That's the biggest bank in the United States. Big finance guy. Needless to say, he heard about Bitcoin and immediately thought it's all a bunch of nonsense. In 2017, he was finally cornered and he said it is a scam. It is nothing more than a hustle where you're just trying to get a greater fool to buy it. He hated it so much that he threatened to fire any JP Morgan employee that bought Bitcoin, and in 2021, JP Morgan opened up a crypto division, okay? I don't need to tell you who Goldman Sachs is, okay? If you remember 2008, they were in the news quite a bit, and I don't think anybody liked them very much. Goldman Sachs in 2020, 12 years after Bitcoin came out, ran a deep dive into the entire class, and the final conclusion was that cryptocurrencies are not a viable asset class. And who knows more about what makes money work and what makes assets than an established company like Goldman Sachs? And then, of course, in 2021, they opened a crypto division. Okay? The reality is, if we're just looking at the financial gain involved in cryptocurrency, the so-called experts from roughly the last 10 years that have insisted that there is no value to this, that it's all a scam, that it's just a Ponzi, that it's a whatever, they have been utterly and completely destroyed in terms of investment advice by the casual nerds who saw better. Okay, we're dealing with Bitcoin being by far the most valuable asset class since it was created in 2008, despite the so-called experts repeatedly saying that it has no value. And the reason why these people say that is because they just don't understand the technology behind it. On the surface, it's easy to understand why they might think this way, Part of what I'm trying to get to here is don't trust your financial advisor when they say one thing or the other. They don't know. We're making this up as we go along, so to speak. Okay, I'm a history professor, and yet I'm the Bitcoin expert, the blockchain expert, because we don't have professional blockchain experts. This is a new asset class. There are many global resources that have value because they are needed and there is a limited supply. And everybody in here knows what supply and demand is. For example, there is oil, right? Only so much oil is produced every year, and we all know there's a lot of industries out there and a lot of people that need oil. You need it. Only so much is produced. Oil now has value. There is gold, right? Only so much gold is produced every year. We cannot print gold. We cannot make it out of thin air. Goodness knows the medieval alchemists tried. And because there is a demand for it and there is a limited supply, well, gold has value. Rubber is a raw material that a lot of companies need. Right now, you might not have anything to do with raw rubber, but everybody in here knows that this is an asset with value because we're going to make car tires and such. And so people like Goodyear and Firestone need this, and only so much is produced every year. Fish, there's a lot of fish in the sea, but it's not unlimited. And an awful lot of institutions need fish for a wide variety of things. Fish is a limited supply asset. Wheat, we can grow all the wheat we want, yeah, but it's only produced at such a rate. And because we need it and there's a limited supply, wheat has value. So what does this have to do with cryptocurrency or blockchain technology, to be more specific? Well, blockchain creates digital tokens in a limited supply, that is fully decentralized. Nobody can manipulate the amount, nobody can censor it, nobody can stop it. It is borderless, it can be instantly transferred or near instantly, making them exactly like a real world commodity, that is cryptocurrencies based on blockchains. And ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. The key here is digital scarcity. When Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin, what he did for the first time was create computer code that is fixed in supply. You cannot produce more than 21 million Bitcoins. You cannot produce more than X number of whatever cryptocurrency we're talking about. Hackers can't do it. Governments can't do it. You can't just duplicate it on your computer. This is a limited supply commodity, much like oil, much like wheat, much like raw rubber. So the question would then be, is this useful? Is there a use for this, much like there is a use for raw rubber, or there is a use for wheat, or there is a use for oil? Because if we can find a use for this, all of a sudden, a scarce commodity takes on real-world value, just like a physical real-world commodity. And what I'm here to tell you today is, yeah, there's use. Okay, there is real-world use that can make the world a better place. Digital commodities can be useful for tasks such as ending counterfeiting, making supply chain more efficient, decentralized finance, smart contracts, etc. If you go to Goodyear and you say to them, we can use blockchain technology to make your supply chain vastly more efficient and get your tires to market quicker, Goodyear's interested, aren't they? If we go to winemakers and say, we have a digital commodity that you can use to end the counterfeiting of your wine, those winemakers are now interested. And then when you say to them, there's only so many of this, only so much of this, and you have to buy it, well, they buy it, don't they? And when they buy it, the price goes up. Digital scarcity of a digital commodity. This has never been done before. This has never been done before. Simply put, this new asset class is ingenious. It is extremely useful, and it is on the verge of mass adoption by a wide range of institutions. Over half of the adult population under 30 now owns blockchain assets, and that's 22% of the US population. 80% or more of Fortune 500 companies are exploring blockchain uses in their own systems. Institutional investment is absolutely surging. And by institutional investment, I mean sovereign wealth funds, I mean big investment funds, pension funds, etc., are looking at this also as they suddenly realize that in the past 10 years, this is what they really should have been taking seriously. They shouldn't have been listening to the president of the biggest bank in the United States. They should have been listening to the nerds, right? They should have been listening to the nerds. I can assure you, Paul Krugman won the Nobel Prize in economics. And in 1996, he said internet commerce will never take off. And they gave him the Nobel Prize in economics. Boy, was he right. You see what I mean? Universities are adding blockchain classes left and right. It's by far the most in-demand job for computer science majors, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. Here is one use case. Here is one concept that I want you to think about that shows how blockchain is revolutionary. Now, we're just going to scratch the surface, and I don't know if we have any CPAs in here, and if we do, I'm sorry, okay? But, because I'm about to butcher this, I'm sure, okay? I'm doing the best I can. Blockchain revolutionizes accounting, okay? Single entry accounting was invented in antiquity, okay? The Romans used it, the Persians used it, the Egyptians, so on and so forth. Okay, and single entry accounting is very simple. What we have is we have one line, okay, and one line records expenses and assets, much like you're balancing your checkbook for those of you that are still living in the 1990s. So, you know, 120 is taken out for your electric bill, 39 is taken out for this and that, but then we have money come in, and at the bottom we have a total where the profits and loss, the assets and expenses total up. Well, now this is a problem, okay, because the data is incomplete, determining input and output is inefficient. Obviously, there's plenty of errors, and this is particularly difficult to audit. If I go to you and you're using single entry accounting, and I say, well, how much did you bring in this month? This doesn't tell you, does it? It's hard to figure out. How much did you spend this month? Well, I don't know. All I have is the total at the bottom. And so this works for simple stuff. It doesn't work for more complicated accounting purposes. And so in the Middle Ages, they invented double entry accounting. And double entry accounting now has two lines. We have one line for income, one line for expense. So what I can now do is say, how much did you bring in this month? You can tell me. How much did you spend this month? Now you can tell me. We also have the totals. And this makes it possible for trade and commerce to take place over long distances. Because you see, on this, where it says supplies, $200 is an expense for me. But if I'm doing business with you Persians in the back, that $200 expense for me is a $200 asset for you. So my expense line lines up with your asset line. And when we do business, we now have the same data, so to speak. Now, double entry accounting provides more information. It works. It does make global business more efficient. That's why the Venetian merchants and whoever, they also developed it in Asia, came up with it. It enables auditing to take place on a much greater scale. Still prone to errors and fraud. It's still prone to cooking the books. It's still prone to these issues. What does blockchain do? Well, blockchain creates a triple entry. Blockchain creates triple entry accounting. Not only do I have my expenses and my costs, and you have your expenses and your costs which sync up with mine, but now we have a public ledger, a public blockchain that records both, and it is self-auditing. It is self-auditing. So now we have a whole new line of data that can be used to verify our information. This makes cooking the books and fraud particularly more difficult, because if I suddenly decide that that $200 asset is going to be a $300 asset, it doesn't match up on the blockchain. You see, and so it's a whole new level of accountability that adds another layer of efficiency to accounting practices. It opens the door to all kinds of stuff. For example, machines can now do business with each other, right? A machine can order something from another machine, pay in cryptocurrency, and they know that the numbers will match. It's a big step forward. It's a big step forward. So that's one use of blockchain that I don't think the folks at Goldman Sachs were necessarily thinking about, which is really ironic considering that they're all a bunch of accountants. Anyway, politicians, bank leaders, other powers that be have an extremely limited understanding of how this works. And I'm terribly sorry to say this, but it happens to be true. Let's be honest, most members of Congress don't even know their own email passwords. Okay, so if I start trying to talk about the intricacies of proof-of-stake blockchain and block times and consensus mechanisms, it's going to go over their head pretty darn quickly. Our good friend the Donald here tweeted, I'm not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which are not money and whole value, whose value is highly volatile, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, this is, Mr. Billionaire businessman himself, right? And don't worry, maybe you're a fan of Donald Trump. I'm going to have something for you too. Here we have someone on the other side of the aisle, Brad Sherman. Bitcoin has no use other than to fund illegal activities. It should be nipped in the bud. Elizabeth Warren, right? She hates crypto. She absolutely hates it. She despises it and rails against it every chance she gets. So there's plenty of hate on both sides of the aisle up in Washington. Moving on. They don't understand it. That's the problem. They should be pitied, I suppose. So what are they going to try to do? What are they going to try to do? Well, they're going to try to regulate it, put regulations on it, much like we tried to regulate Napster. How well did that work? They're going to fail. They're going to try to create digital dollars, CBDCs, which we're going to explore in a minute. That's not going to work either. They're going to try to spread misinformation, call it things that it's not, refer to things about it that are not true. There was a court in Canada that ordered a crypto wallet provider to give the information of all of its users. And of course, crypto wallets are anonymous. They don't have the information of all of its users. And so they replied to the judge and said, we don't have this information. Please explain to me how we can. But of course, the judge just didn't understand that, right? The judge had no idea what he was dealing with. They're going to try to ban it. Right? They're going to say, this is illegal, you can't use it. I promise you it's going to fail. It's already been banned in several countries. It doesn't go away. People don't quit using it because of its utility. Who knows what else? I don't really know. I don't really know. So you're going to hear a lot of this. You're going to hear an awful lot of FUD. Look on your glossary. And quite a bit of it is based on people that don't know. So let's talk about a central bank digital currency. Now again, we already are familiar with Bitcoin, we're already familiar with blockchain. This is part 2, so we're just going to start with the assumption that you know how it works. So what's stopping the US government from creating its own centralized version, the official US dollar cryptocurrency? Why is this not a viable solution? Well, first and foremost, a digital version of fiat currency, and fiat is in your glossary, is designed to be a national alternative to cryptocurrency, right? Several nations will soon be issuing them. Sweden, Nigeria, Bahamas, they're all going to be issuing them. So they're coming out, they're going to be here, but they're going to be controlled by a central authority. These governments will be able to create or disappear as much of this currency as they want. There are 21 million Bitcoins, there will be 21 million Bitcoins, there will never be any more. It is a supply that cannot be manipulated. That's not how central currency works. That's not how the Federal Reserve works. And so if they create a central currency, they're going to be able to manipulate the supply just like they do now. They can restrict where it can go. If they decide you can't send your US digital dollar to China, if they decide you can't send it to Ukraine, if they decide you can't send it to Iran, well, they'll be able to restrict it. They'll be able to stop it, right? Well, with cryptocurrency, it's borderless. You can send it anywhere to anyone. The government could create its own official crypto wallet for the crypto dollars, which is an absolute nightmare scenario. That means every single purchase that you make, every single transaction that you make goes straight to somebody at the government. If they decide we don't want you to buy this product, we don't want you to do this, well, they could restrict it because they would be in control. As a matter of fact, if the IRS decides that you owe them X amount of money, all they have to do is take it out of your digital wallet because they control the currency. This is not something that the people are going to cooperate with. And so when you hear about a central bank digital currency, you need to understand it doesn't really work. We already keep our money in banks. So would you keep a central bank digital currency in an official wallet rather than a bank? What are the banks going to think about that? How are the banks going to operate if people don't deposit? 90% of all money is already digital, right? We do digital banking all the time. I can send digital dollars to anybody through my bank, and you can too. That's how most of us pay our bills. So there kind of already is a digital dollar out there, right? Central bank digital currencies, not borderless, not frictionless, not fixed supply, not politically neutral, not censorship proof. And so please don't fall into the simple notion that whenever they come out with the official version, this Bitcoin stuff is going to go away. It's definitely an entirely different beast. Now, there are, which we'll talk about in a minute, what are called stable coins. There are what are called stable coins, and these are digital currencies that are pegged by US dollars. And I want you to understand what a stable coin is because they're becoming considerably more common, and they are lighting all kinds of lights in Washington because they're a new way of using dollars that, again, these folks don't necessarily understand. So we'll talk about them in a minute. Now, I said this in the last slide, and then we'll move on. These made these obsolete. It's just that simple, okay? Cars made horses obsolete. And when the horse breeders found out that the internal combustion engine came along, they came out with their own version of the automobile, and obviously this is just not the same thing, right? You know, look out, Henry Ford, we're coming for you. Well, no, actually you're not, okay? This is the car, this is the horse. A central bank digital currency cannot be the same as a cryptocurrency because of the restrictions that would obviously be on it. So now let's talk about stable coins. Okay, you need to understand what a stable coin is now that you know what Bitcoin is, now that you know what blockchain assets are. Well, very simply put, a stable coin is a digital currency that is directly pegged to a fiat currency. They operate within the crypto space, but they're not blockchain-based cryptos, okay? And there's a whole lot of them out there. There's Tether, USD Coin, Paxos, Gemini. There's a whole bunch of these that are being created. In very simple terms, the idea is one of these does and will always equal $1. That's the idea if it's pegged to the US dollar. Now you say to yourself, I have one Tether, what makes it worth $1? Well, the people at Tether have a dollar in a vault somewhere, or supposedly they do. And so it's kind of like the dollar being backed with gold. For every Tether you have, somewhere in a vault, a dollar is being held back, kind of like the way banking used to work before the Federal Reserve System. Well, Maybe they do, maybe they don't. What happens if these companies don't actually allow you to audit their books? How do we know that Tether has $1 in a vault somewhere? That's one of the big questions, because these stable coins are popping up somewhere, all over the place. Some of them are very transparent and are proving through audits that they are backing all of their tokens with actual US dollars. Others, like Tether, would rather you not know. They're just saying, trust us, which is scaring a lot of people. These are often used by cryptocurrency traders because you can go on exchanges and you can buy Bitcoin with these digital dollars, and then you can sell Bitcoin and get these digital dollars back. And anytime you want to cash these out for real dollars, you can. Uncle Sam is freaking out. We have created an entirely new financial platform from the ground up that they have absolutely no idea how to deal with. Okay, and so stable coins are all the talk on Washington right now. All types of financial committees and things like that are emerging. Should we regulate it? Should we force these institutions to be part of the FDIC? How can the American public buy Tether and know that those Tether coins are backed up? It's kind of a big issue. What you need to understand is these aren't blockchain-based cryptocurrencies, because when you buy one Tether, you're buying $1. That's all you're doing. You're not buying anything that might necessarily appreciate in value or be used the way a cryptocurrency really is. Now, there's some terms that we need to use to understand this. Most of you are familiar with Bitcoin. Most of you know what Bitcoin is, right? Cryptocurrency and Bitcoin are not the same thing. Okay, cryptocurrency is a blockchain asset, of which Bitcoin is one of them, but there's a lot of other cryptos out there. There is Ethereum, there is Solana, there is Polkadot, there is Algorand. There's a lot of different blockchain platforms that are competing with Bitcoin, and we collectively call these cryptocurrency. And it is blockchain that is the technology that powers all of them. So these terms are often used interchangeably. Please don't do that. When we talk about Bitcoin, we're talking about the specific Bitcoin platform. When we talk about cryptocurrency, we could be talking about any number of blockchain platforms. Again, Ethereum, Solana, Algorand, so on and so forth. There are many, many cryptocurrencies. Now, with that in mind, things get interesting. Things get interesting. Okay, we're not going to talk about Bitcoin. Now we'll talk about some of the smart contract-enabled blockchain platforms like Ethereum that enable all sorts of entirely new operations for assets. Secure, decentralized, immutable data is a game changer. And like I said, there are many of these. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 blockchain-based cryptocurrencies that have been created. Most are garbage, but a handful are particularly interesting. And some of these, man, they're just incredible. They're incredible. Let's talk about DeFi, decentralized finance. DeFi, decentralized finance. You are going to hear about this if you have not heard about it already. We simply call it DeFi. DeFi are financial operations that can be performed without the need for any intermediary, like a brokerage or a bank or a middleman of some sort. In other words, through smart contracts, you can trade assets, you can exchange assets, you can transfer assets without anybody in between the buyer and the seller. This would be a traditional. We have the clients, and the bank is the centralized player that sets everybody up with the money, the loans, and the deposits. Well, in DeFi, people use smart contracts to connect to each other with nobody in the middle. What do I mean by that? Let's use an example. Every day people buy stock. We go to the stock market, we buy stock. Maybe we buy stock in Apple. Maybe we buy stock in Ford. Maybe we buy stock in Nike. Maybe we buy stock in General Electric, right? Everybody in here has bought stock before. We know that this is a very simple process. As a matter of fact, instead of looking at those companies, maybe we ought to look at these instead, right? Taiwan Semiconductor, Nestle, Petro Brazil, Netflix. Does anybody know what the four of these all have in common for those of us in this room? Anybody? These are four of the main stocks that PERS is invested in, just in case you're wondering. PERS is invested in a lot of stuff. These four are four of the big ones. And so if you're planning on retiring soon, you might want to take a look at their company balance sheets because you own stock in Netflix. Now, you want to buy some stock, right? I want to buy some stock. I want to buy some Netflix stock. Well, what would I do right now? I'm going to use a stockbroker as an example. I would go to, say, E-Trade, okay? And we have the buyers on one side, we have the sellers on the other. Now, you probably already know that if you buy stock on E-Trade, E-Trade is not selling you that stock. Okay, all E-Trade is doing is connecting the buyer to the seller. E-Trade is the middleman. Y'all know that, right? So, what happens is, E-Trade takes a nice commission. I want to buy it, you want to sell it. They're the escrow agent. That's how stock broking and stock trading has always worked. Now let's apply smart contracts. Now, let's apply DeFi. Instead of centralized, with E-Trade being the central player, let's use Ethereum and use DeFi to eliminate the middleman and connect the buyers and the sellers directly in a decentralized manner. Okay? Anybody can use Ethereum, and smart contract platforms can make it so I know you and you know me, and because of the immutable data on the blockchain, I don't have to worry about it being an authentic stock. You don't have to worry about it being an authentic currency. Everything works just as if we had gone through a central player. Any asset, a share of stock, a bond, a security, a commodity, whatever it is, can be turned into a token on a blockchain and traded with guaranteed accuracy because that blockchain data is immutable. In other words, we don't need these guys anymore to buy and sell stock. We don't need them. You can sell it, I can buy it. Nobody in the middle stopped it from happening if I use Ethereum or one of these other smart contract platforms. It is a decentralized commodity trade. Decentralized. DeFi can involve banking and lending. Same concept happens whenever we go to the bank. Banks don't lend you their money. Everybody knows this, right? You deposit money in the bank turns around and loans it to someone else. The bank is just the middleman. Okay, I want to borrow money, you want to loan money, so I go and get the money for my mortgage, which happens to be your money, and the bank sits in the middle to facilitate the trade, right? Well, instead of letting a bank do it, you can do it over DeFi. I can borrow, you can loan, the Ethereum platform via smart contracts can make it happen, and we don't need the bank anymore. These blockchain platforms cannot be censored. They cannot be shut down. They cannot be stopped. They can be used anywhere. They are effectively anonymous. The banking industry is about to be upended, and you better believe Uncle Sam is kind of freaking out. Up on Washington, they're having very complex conversations in committees over what's happening when people are borrowing and lending and going around the central players like banks to do it. Presently, DeFi is mostly just cryptocurrencies. Presently, for the most part, all people are doing is buying and selling other cryptos. I'm using Bitcoin to buy Ethereum. You're using Ethereum to buy Algorand or Solana, so on and so forth. There's a few protocols that are now getting into actual stocks and actual securities. But we're still very much in the early phases of this. And so I'm giving you the beginning. Now, what exactly are the protocols that you would use to do this? Well, these are called decentralized exchanges, or DEXs, okay? They aren't run necessarily by a central entity. Again, anybody can use them. Uniswap, Pancake, SushiSwap, some of these look like, you know, games my 12-year-old would play on her smartphone, okay? But billions of dollars worth of assets are traded on these as we speak, and that is 100% true. In fact, there are a lot of decentralized platforms that are popping up on all sorts of smart contract chains that enable you to buy and sell cryptocurrencies and now other commodities. One is called Mirror Protocol, and it now has tokenized versions of real stock. You can buy Netflix stock through the Mirror Protocol without going through a broker. But right now, it's mostly just crypto trading. And the complexities of these, pretty darn impressive. I mean, the nerds have really gone to work to make this something else. There are also DeFi protocols that enable you to borrow and lend crypto stablecoins. If you just want to use dollars, if you say to yourself, I'm not interested in, you know, borrowing Ethereum, lending or doing Ethereum, I want to use US dollars, you can do that too. Anchor Protocol right here is on a blockchain called Terra Luna, and it's a stablecoin. It's a stablecoin, a really interesting stablecoin. And if you were to take your dollars and turn it into their UST stablecoin, which is worth $1, you can get a 20% APY by depositing. That's the, now go to your bank and deposit it in the savings account in your bank and say, I want 20% a year on my savings account. and you'll understand why, why Anchor here is becoming more popular. And you better believe, again, the people up in Washington are trying to figure this out. It's like earning interest in a bank account without using an actual bank. And you see, your UST that you're loaning is tied to your crypto wallet via smart contract, so it can't disappear. You can have access to it anytime you want. The bank can't seize it, the bank can't stop you from having it, the bank can't stop you from transferring it, because there is no bank. It's all in your crypto wallet, immutably tied to you. There are a few centralized versions too. And these very much are crypto banks, for lack of a better description. If you want to deposit Ethereum, if you want to deposit Bitcoin, you can deposit it in Nexo here, and you will get a return because other people will then turn around and borrow that as stable coins. And it's very much like a bank. BlockFi and Nexo are based in other countries. Already the SEC has shut them down from operating in the United States, right? Because they don't follow necessarily US regulations. And they're trying to work with the SEC and the other financial regulators to figure out how to make this work. But the reality is these aren't banks, but they very much operate like banks. And your crypto is vastly more secure by using them because it's all tied to you by smart contract. The bank can't just go under and it disappear. You can never actually lose your cryptocurrency. And there's no middleman. There's no E-Trade, there's no Ameritrade, there's no bank involved. In order to use decentralized exchanges, they have to have what are called liquidity providers. They have to have people that are willing to make their cryptocurrency liquid so that other people can buy and sell, and you can be a liquidity provider. And you can tie your crypto to these DEXs by smart contracts, so you never actually lose it because it's tied to your wallet, and you can actually earn a percentage of the commission that ordinarily would be picked up by E-Trade or Ameritrade or Merrill Lynch or whoever is doing it. In other words, instead of these guys making the commission on the trade, you can make the commission on the trade. You can become your own little version of E-Trade, Merrill Lynch, Ameritrade, whatever. And every time a trade takes place across Curve or across Pancake or across Balancer, because your crypto is part of the liquidity protocol, you get a proportional percentage of the exchange fees. It's fundamentally game-changing. Fundamentally game-changing. Decentralized finance where you can anonymously earn commissions on stock trades. And if we can do it, so can these guys. All across the world, the smart people, the kids, the nerds, are figuring out how to use DeFi themselves, and they're making a killing from it, for lack of a better description. It's borderless, it's decentralized, it's frictionless. Anybody can use it. And in the last session, I said, what's going to happen when the IRS shows up and says, how much crypto did you buy and sell? These guys have absolutely no idea how DeFi works. If you go to Elizabeth Warren or Donald Trump or Brad Sherman and say, please explain to me how to provide liquidity on Curve, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. They don't even know what it is. So we're dealing with a revolutionary new technology that is crazy. Financial services controlled presently by a very few are now available to anyone, anywhere. DEXs are very easy to use, and they're becoming much simpler. This is Uniswap. It's probably the most popular DEX, or it certainly was a few months ago. If you have Ethereum, if you want to swap it for Aave, which is another cryptocurrency that's becoming very popular, all you do is tie it to your crypto wallet. This is how much Ethereum you want to deposit. This is how much Aave you get in return. Press a button, the swap takes place. There was no central player, and nobody even knows who you were or how it happened. And again, if you have both of these already, you can be a liquidity provider and get a portion of the commission that are charged when other people do it. This is the SushiSwap interface. And again, SushiSwap looks ridiculous. So how am I gonna play around with something called SushiSwap, right? SushiSwap has somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 billion worth of locked assets on it right now because people are figuring this out. Decentralized finance will enable you to exchange stocks, property, bonds, etc. in a decentralized manner. It's absolutely taking over as a new financial activity. 18 months ago, $1 billion was locked in DeFi Today, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $90 billion. Y'all might recognize this guy. His name is Kevin O'Leary. He does the Shark Tank thing, right? He was very critical whenever they brought it to him. Once he learned about it, he jumped into the deep end. In 3 or 4 years, financial middlemen are going to be shining shoes. Okay, and the financial middlemen, I mean E-Trade, Merrill Lynch, people like that, because I don't need these guys to buy and sell anymore. I can do it on my own. This is a current chart of how much money is being used in DeFi. Again, it started off very small, and by December it was at its peak. The overall crypto market has kind of gone down a little bit in the last month. It's lost some. And so that's why we see a decline here. And we can own up to that, take it for what you will. But the amount of money that is being moved across DeFi is absolutely exploding. And in a few years, I think $90 billion is going to look like peanuts compared to what's being exchanged. Let's talk about NFTs. Let's talk about NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Who in here's heard of NFTs already? Right? Anybody own any? Anybody own any NFTs? What the heck is an NFT? Right? Saturday Night Live did a skit about NFTs. Yeah, it was pretty funny. What the heck is going on with NFTs? Well, I'm going to explain it to you, okay? An NFT, in a very simple sense, is a unique piece of data stored on a blockchain that can be transferred, okay? In other words, it is a digital receipt of ownership. If you buy something and I record that on a blockchain as yours, you now have that item as an NFT. It's that simple. When you go to Walmart, they give you a receipt when you buy your groceries. An NFT is a digital receipt kept on a blockchain. And as we already know, blockchain data is immutable. It can't be hacked. It can't be altered. Once it's written to a blockchain, it's there permanently, so it's a permanent record of ownership that can be traced. If I own something and then I sell it to Brian, and then Brian sells it to Sam, everything here is tracked on the blockchain, so we know the history of that item. And that's all an NFT really is. It can be created and linked to anything of value, and because it is blockchain-based, can't be forged, ownership provably tracked, you get the idea. Now, right now, NFTs are collectible art, okay? Now, this is why you're looking at this and saying, this NFT thing looks ridiculous, and I can't see how it's going to go everywhere, because these are some of the best examples of present-day NFTs. These are called CryptoPunks and Bored Apes. Each of them were created on the Ethereum blockchain about 2 years ago, something like that. And 10,000 of each were created, really honestly more as just a project than anything that would really have value. But 10,000 punks were created, put on the blockchain at that particular time, which means you cannot forge anymore. Any more that you would create would not be part of that 10,000. So it's impossible to have a fraudulent version, right? Each has a unique ID, and because of that unique status, some people are now saying it's kind of cool to have an ape, or it's kind of cool to have a CryptoPunk. Celebrities are going in and buying. Paris Hilton and Snoop Dogg and all of these people are going in and buying CryptoPunks and Bored Apes and having their name associated with them. And since each one has a unique digital ID, each one is on the blockchain, I know exactly which CryptoPunk is quote-unquote owned by Snoop Dogg. And if he decides to sell it, somebody else knows this is the one that he owned, which, if you're into that sort of thing, somehow gives it value, right? Now, some of these are now selling for millions. These ownership of these pictures are selling for millions, okay? Believe me, I'm as baffled by it as you are. Some more traditional institutions are also getting into the NFT game. Now, this is nothing more than just as collectibles. For example, the NBA has created what it calls Top Shots. Okay, and Top Shots are a digital version of like an old school trading card. Okay, so whenever a player makes a really cool play during a game, they create a small video of that, put it on the NBA website as an NFT. One person can buy an image of that play or a video of that play, and of course it can't be fraudulently transferred. So here we have an example. We got Blake Griffin here, got ourselves a really sick dunk. If you're a Blake Griffin fan, you can go to the NBA Top Shot page, you can buy this NFT on the Ethereum blockchain, and you are now officially registered as the owner of it. It is really nothing more than a digital trading card. Now, you're thinking, no doubt, wait, I can own any one of these pictures, right? All I got to do is right-click and save, right? And I got a copy of any of this stuff, right? Heck, I'm giving you a presentation right now with a video of an NBA Top Shot. What makes somebody own the Top Shot, or what makes somebody own the 8 whenever I can just put a picture of it right here? Well, you can own a copy of a Nolan Ryan rookie card, can't you? I can go out and make 1,000,000 copies of a Nolan Ryan rookie card, and none of them have any value at all. What's the real one worth? There's collectors out there that will pay very good money provided it's the real thing. If it's an authentic, there you go. You can own a copy of a Ming base. Sure, they sell them all over the place. Go to eBay. What's a real one worth? Now, how do you prove that that baseball card is a real Nolan Ryan rookie? How do you know it's not a fake whenever you buy it from somebody? Well, right now you don't. And everybody in here knows a lot of this stuff is fake, isn't it? Can you fake stuff on a blockchain? No, you can't. So if I own an NBA Top Shot of Blake Griffin dunking the ball, I can prove this is the authentic collectible. Nobody else can create the fake. You can't fake data on a blockchain. Now, that being said, these first generation NFTs are nothing more than collectibles. I'm not collecting monkey pictures, okay? I don't collect trading cards. I wish I could collect Ming bases, but unfortunately I'm not there yet either. I'm pretty sure that most of you in this room are on the same page. Sure, collectibles have a lot of value. I get it. People collect baseball cards. Some people have very valuable baseball card collections. I don't have one. I don't imagine many people in here do. I'm not getting into the collectible game, but NFTs can be used for many more applications, okay? Digital collectibles are the ground floor. They're the beginning. They're the putting your toe in the water to see what we can do with digital identity and digital ownership. Because you see, what if we put your house deed on a blockchain as an NFT? That's got real value. You see, you buy a house and we record the purchase of that deed on the Ethereum blockchain. Now you have a link to the ownership of that house. You don't have link to the ownership of a silly picture of an ape. You've got link to an ownership of something that really does contain real world value. And if somebody shows up with a fake mortgage deed, or somebody shows up with fraudulent paperwork, you've got the proof that it belongs to you. And maybe in the United States that's not as big a problem as it is in other parts of the world, but I know that in places like West Africa, farmers have serious problems authenticating property ownership. They buy land and the person selling it to them was not actually the real owner. And of course, record keeping in countries like that is ridiculously poor. And so being able to NFT your house, now we're getting somewhere. What about stock? Right? You buy stock in Netflix. How can you prove that you're the owner of that stock? You're trusting a central entity. You're trusting somebody to hold that stock certificate for you. What if the stock was an NFT? And I am the one associating that NFT with my crypto wallet. You don't own the stock, I do. Concert tickets. Again, a more trivial use, but still something that has a real world use case. Everybody in here probably knows counterfeit tickets are a big problem. You know, for shows and sporting events and things like that. Every Super Bowl, there's always people selling counterfeit tickets to the Super Bowl. And then somebody shows up with his ticket to the seat and there's somebody already sitting there and they're both saying which one of us has the real one. And both people might think that they do because you don't necessarily know who you bought it from. You have to trust the seller of that. Well, let's say Imagine Dragons here has an arena with 10,000 seats in it and they create 10,000 NFTs. Each one of them represents a seat to the show, and you buy one of the 10,000 NFTs. When you go to the show, you can verify this NFT is the real ticket. Somebody shows up with a ticket that is not one of those NFTs. No matter how authentic it looks, it can now be verified on the blockchain, much like you would verify a counterfeit bottle of wine or a counterfeit pharmaceutical. VIP clubs. VIP clubs. There's only so many people that are allowed in this club. You have VIP membership. You get the idea. NFTs can be tied to any real-world asset. They don't just have to be tied to monkey pictures. And there are real-world assets that verified ownership suddenly has a real use case. How about a diploma? How about a diploma at a community college, right? instead of handing out diplomas and recording those records in a central database, we turn these diplomas into NFTs. In 2022, Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College graduates 900 students. Each one of those gets an NFT on the Ethereum blockchain verifying that they got a diploma. Now, 3 or 4 years down the road, some crooked person would really like to be able to have a diploma from MGCCC because he's looking to pretend that he graduated. Newsflash, he can't create a fake because he can't go back and create a fake diploma. Now, in third world countries, what happens is people want fake certifications, and so they show up with an envelope full of money, and they go to the person who enters that stuff in the computer, and they say, here you go, please give me a diploma from 5 years ago. I really want to be a surgeon. And if the price is right, those people do it. Because centralized systems can be hacked. Centralized systems can be altered. But now if you create NFT-based certifications, we don't do it anymore. Can't be done. NFTs can be used to give benefits and other dividends. Again, these are programmable. Blockchain smart contracts are programmable. Different variables can be put in there. So we could give owners of NFTs certain crypto rewards or certain crypto benefits. There's a blockchain platform called VeChain, and I'm kind of a fan of VeChain. And VeChain has NFTs that they call X nodes, and only 2,600 of them exist on the VeChain platform. And there's parameters for owning an X node. But if you are the owner of an X node, if an X node is associated with your VeChain wallet, you get crypto from VeChain on a consistent basis, much like a stock reward, much like a stock dividend. And so the 2,600 X node owners get something for owning that NFT. It's not just a monkey picture, it is now a real world commodity. X node owners also can vote on changes to the VeChain platform. They have a certain agency within the platform itself, and that's what makes that NFT suddenly worth something. Fractional ownership becomes possible with NFTs. You can buy shares, much like stock shares, only now we're dealing with decentralization. Real super expensive fancy cars, right? Why do you think people actually pay gobsmacks full of money for these cars? They're not doing it because they want to drive Ferraris, they're doing it because they're investments. Right? They're doing it because in 20 years, these cars are likely to be worth considerably more. But I can't go out and pay $500,000 for one of these collectible cars. But if the ownership of that car was divided up into shares, I can buy an NFT where I own a fraction of it. And I might have a vote in what is done with it, a fancy piece of art. We all know that art investing for some people is actually a pretty lucrative practice. But again, anybody in here have a few $1 million to go out and buy a Renoir? Right? What if that Renoir was cut into a series of NFTs, and then you could buy a share of it, and now you are a partial owner of a rather expensive collectible. Music catalogs, music publishing, it's just another simple example. This is big business, and there's people that buy music catalogs and of course get royalties every time those songs are used in certain applications. What's the most notorious music catalog purchase was when Michael Jackson bought all the Beatles music, right? Y'all probably know about that story. And every time the Beatles music is used something, Michael Jackson's estate gets a percentage, which of course turned out to be pretty lucrative for him while he was still alive. Well, music catalogs can be cut into NFTs. And you can purchase an NFT in a music catalog, and now you get a portion of the royalties proportionate to your NFT. Now, you say to yourself, I can right-click a picture of a Bored Ape and save it on my computer. What does ownership matter? Well, now all of a sudden ownership of an NFT matters, because that NFT comes with benefits that can't be faked and can't be right-clicked. It's a revolutionary concept, all decentralized, no central players, borderless, anonymous, anyone can do it. Yes, people are getting into NFTs. Melania Trump released an NFT collection. Here she is pledging allegiance. Here is an image of her, I don't know, hat, wearing said hat, right? You can buy and officially own these pictures as an NFT on blockchain, and most certainly the Donald has his now that have been released. Here he is, I don't know, making America great with chicken, you tell me, right? But these have been released, and you can buy these as NFTs and own this picture. And these are much like the Bored Apes, boy, there's a pun there, or the CryptoPunks from somebody who is not a fan of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because they have no real world value. Let's talk about DAOs. Let's move on to another topic. Decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. Any type of interest group, a charity, a club, a group of people that like to bicycle on the weekend, or a group of people that like to do this or that, can now create what is known as a DAO. We already have internet groups. We have chat rooms and all types of communities online where people communicate and interact and all of that. Everybody is aware of that. What do you say we create X numbers of memberships in a decentralized autonomous organization, and you can own a share of your membership in that, much like a country club. These could be businesses, they could be charities, they could be fan clubs, right? The Imagine Dragons could have a DAO of 1,000 super fans, and they buy a share in it. And of course, having that DAO now means the owners of that DAO can do whatever they want, right? If they're a charity, they can raise money and give it to a charity. If they're, investment groups, they can, raise money and invest. There was one DAO that was created that wanted to buy one of the original printed copies of the U.S. Constitution. When the Constitution was first sent out for ratification, X number of copies were sent out for people to read, and a handful of those original printed copies still exist, and they are incredibly valuable today. Having one of the 10 surviving copies of the Constitution is actually a pretty big deal. And one was about to go up for sale, and they thought that it would be worth X millions of dollars. And so a DAO was created where investors could all buy a share in it and own a proportion of that copy of the U.S. Constitution. And they didn't raise enough money and they didn't get it. So it didn't work. But shares in a DAO can be distributed, they can be sold. I belong to this organization. I don't want to belong to it anymore, but again, there's only 1,000 members, much like a country club, so I can now turn around and sell it to you or transfer it to you. It's an internet user group with a bank account. It's an internet user group with a bank account. The possibilities are substantial. Let's talk about the Internet of Things. Let's talk about the Internet of Things. Blockchain, now this is a little complicated. You're going to have to bear with me, but machines can talk to each other like they never have before. Machines can talk to each other in ways that obviously have never happened in the past. Well, IoT, Internet of Things, is simply the increasingly connected world of smart devices. IoT promises to dramatically increase efficiency, safety, security, et cetera, et cetera. And when you add blockchain to IoT, all of a sudden we have a whole range of potential uses that didn't exist before, because now data can be managed in a decentralized manner. If we look at consumer products, we already know that there's all sorts of IoT products out there already, right? We've got our Ring doorbells, our smart thermostats, we've got, the Alexa, right? My first Alexa was given to me by somebody who damn sure didn't want Amazon to know what he was up to. What house wouldn't be complete without your Alexa-enabled smart soap dispenser, right? Boy, IoT, right? I just don't know how I lived without it. The problem here is the data that is collected by these devices, which is substantial, is kept within walled gardens. Okay, Ring is collecting all kinds of data on how you live in your house. And if you don't think they are, I've got a bridge to sell you. Your smart thermostat is collecting data and sending it back to the mothership on how you live in your home with your thermostat. And if you don't think Alexa is listening to you, folks, I got news for you. It absolutely is, right? And it's sending it back to the central servers at Amazon, or the central servers at Ring, or the central servers wherever. And as we also know, they profit from this data, don't they? They turn around and sell it. That's how Facebook makes more of its money than anything else. Well, let's add blockchain to it. Right? Let's add blockchain to it. Right now, what happens to it? What happens to the information? What happens to your information? What does Ring do with your data? I don't know. Who knows? Ring knows. They make money from it. And these devices can't talk to each other either. The data exists within walled gardens. These are all individual platforms that are all, of course, centralized. Let's add blockchain to it. Blockchain enables digital identity that gives you control over your data. There are blockchain platforms that are now existing to provide a base layer of communication that these devices can exist on. And because it's blockchain, you are actually in control of what this data is and how this data releases. Data can be selectively released, where you only reveal what you want to know. For example, this is again a simple example. Let's say you are a truck driver Let's say you're a truck driver with a certain certification to haul a certain type of material, right? Now, of course, you have to have that certification on you because it's illegal for somebody to be driving without it. Well, if you use digital identity on what is being developed by IOTA, what can happen is you can prove that you have that certification. Yes, I have the right license, but you don't have to say your name. You don't have to say where you live. You don't have to say what your age is. You don't have to give them any more information, but you can verify, much like an NFT, I am in fact a licensed truck driver. And so IoT with blockchain opens the door for a type of data use that has never really been used before. And also because blockchain can be a base layer for devices to communicate, there's no more walled gardens. The data now becomes what one person has called the new oil. And if Facebook and Amazon and Ring are going to make money off of your data, why can't you? How about you make money off of your data? How about you be in control of the data that gets collected and how it is monetized? Data marketplaces are now being developed where consumers own their own data, and if you're going to use it to profit, okay, fine, I want a cut. Much like an NFT, I expect a cut of the profits if Amazon is going to tell an advertiser, what I'm doing at home, what TV shows I'm watching, or whatever. And so data marketplaces are now opened up with blockchain. And I admit that this is a very surface level explanation of a complex process, but IoT is a big use for blockchain that is just now being explored. And it goes even beyond consumer products, well beyond consumer products, because you see, machines talking to each other don't have to be Amazon Alexas and Ring doorbells. They can be factories and the machines in the factories, right? Factory equipment can now buy, sell, rent, communicate with other devices using blockchain technology to verify the data and paying each other in cryptocurrency. Products, materials can be tracked and managed globally across different handlers, different institutions, all using the blockchain as a base layer. And we call this IoT, or also Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0, a new type of industry. Let's say Ford is building cars in Detroit, and that factory, it needs steel, it needs rubber, it needs glass, it needs seatbelt straps. Well, there's a company in Taiwan that makes the seatbelt straps that are the source for the truck being made in Detroit. Well, the machine involved in that process on the car then tells the machine in Taiwan, this is how many we need. The machine then sends it and gets paid in cryptocurrency. Seamless, no middleman, no dude with a clipboard, nobody inspecting to see how many seatbelt straps we have left. The machines are autonomous. They're communicating with each other and paying each other purely over the blockchain. Now, how is this possible? Well, it's possible because we have a third row of accounting. We have triple entry accounting. We have an immutable ledger that both machines can look at and agree that the data is valid. That's what makes this possible. IoT 4.0. Open blockchain data makes this possible. This doesn't work in walled gardens. This doesn't work if Ford has its own set of data and doesn't go anywhere, and the Taiwan company has its own set of data, and the two machines operate on entirely different platforms. If there is one blockchain that they all use, all of a sudden it becomes interconnected. And so the blockchain platform's working on that. That is pretty darn cool. The metaverse, who in here's heard of that? Raise your hand if you've heard of the metaverse, right? It's a fun one. The metaverse, still kind of being defined in very simple terms. The metaverse is interactive worlds where individuals can interact online as virtual representations of themselves. Remember this? About 10 years ago, right? You're going to turn yourself into a bunny and go around the world and buy virtual property in Second Life. We even had sessions on it here at the conference. Well, that is more or less what a modern version of the metaverse is. Welcome, okay? Now, the problem with Second Life is that it's centralized. One central set of servers are being used to run the Second Life environment, and that means the Second Life people are collecting the data, and the Second Life people control who's a member, who isn't a member, who interacts, how you interact. If we don't like you, we kick you off. right? If we turn this into a decentralized world, right? If we turn this into a decentralized world, we now have open worlds that aren't controlled by any central servers that anybody can interact with. And Decentraland and the Sandbox are two blockchain-based metaverses that more or less are blockchain-based versions of Second Life, where you can buy land in them and you can own property and you can interact. And of course, much like an NFT, you buy it, you own it, it's tied to you. Nobody can come in and take it. Nobody can come in and kick you out, so on and so forth. And yes, the celebrities are going in and buying land in Decentraland, and companies are going in and buying land in Decentraland. I heard the other day McDonald's has bought a chunk of land in one of these, and it's going to operate like a real world store. You can go into the metaverse McDonald's and order a Big Mac, and they'll deliver a real one to your door, right? So I don't know. Now, I will admit, I'm a little skeptical on all this, right? I'm not into this sort of thing, but there are people out there that think that's the case. And of course, centralized versions are happening too. You probably all heard Facebook is now banking its future on Meta because it wants to become the Meta, and so now it's Facebook with VR. Hooray for us, right? Now, this is centralized, right? Facebook is centralized. These are decentralized based on the blockchain. So the concept is the same, but the function is radically different. The Facebook version of Meta is nothing more than a modern version of Second Life. You tell me if it's going to work. Of all of these applications I've discussed, as you can probably guess, I'm not entirely convinced that this is going to stick, but I've been wrong about a lot of other things before. Web3. Web3, you're going to hear this one. This is a buzzword that clarifies blockchain's role in the next iteration of internet use. Web 1 was the 90s internet, when you would go and just get information. That's all you did, like Wikipedia. You show up and it tells you what you want to know. Web 2 was when we started interacting with the web. Not only does it tell you, but you can now interact back. And Facebook, of course, is a good example of Web 2. Right? Not only are you getting information, but you're able to send in information and interact. Well, Web 3 is when we introduce blockchain and crypto and DeFi and NFTs and all of this other stuff to the web so that you are interacting with it in a radically new way. Now, what's the real difference here? Well, Web 1 was centralized. Central servers gave you the information. Web 2 is also centralized. Facebook, centralized entity that you interact with. Web 3 is going to be decentralized. These institutions, like DeFi, like NFTs, do not have central actors that control your access and operate as gatekeepers. They're open to anybody to use them. Blockchain technology creates borderless, decentralized, anonymous assets that can be transferred effortlessly and near instantly. And we talked in the last session about how cryptocurrency is a financial platform that renders the traditional financial space obsolete. They really are a dinosaur killer. And the central banks of the world are stressed out when people buy Bitcoin and when people buy Ethereum. But ladies and gentlemen, there's fiat currency which absolutely could be rendered obsolete by this. Ladies and gentlemen, they are much more than cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Blockchain technology is much more than this. Blockchain technology is DeFi, where you can engage in decentralized financial transactions and even profit from them. You can bank without a bank. You can trade stock without E-Trade. You own your finances in a way that you have never done before. You become your own little stockbroker. There are NFTs, where you can have ties to ownership of perhaps something silly, but also perhaps something very tangible. Provably yours, decentralized, no one can be the gatekeeper. They are Internet of Things, where machines will be talking to each other using blockchain platforms as a base layer. They are the metaverse, which again, if you want to jump into that, have fun. I don't have much to do with it, but it's definitely there. And I don't even know what's next. What's next? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. And with that, are there any questions? Yes, sir. You in the back. I think I know.
Could this be used for election?
You know, that's the big question. Could blockchain voting be used for election? In terms of creating an immutable record of the votes themselves, absolutely, right? Because you see, when people say this election wasn't right and the votes were changed and the data was entered, but then somebody went in and changed it. Well, if the votes are put on an immutable blockchain, it can be instantly audited and nobody can disagree with the results. But it's important that you bring this up because, see, blockchains are immutable. Once you enter it, it doesn't change, and we have to agree on any data that's added, but they don't necessarily verify that the data was accurate when it was put on. It's the old computer term, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if I am not registered to vote, if I'm not a legitimate voter, but they let me vote anyway, my vote gets recorded on the blockchain, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that my vote was valid to begin with because I wasn't a valid voter. You see, so what we have there are what is known as oracles, right? Institutions that are also blockchain-based, and don't get me started, that are there to verify the accuracy of the data before it goes on the blockchain. Now, again, with voting, we can argue all day long, how do we verify that someone's a valid voter? But with something like weather data, if farmers want to know what the weather data is, blockchain-based sensors can collect weather data, it can put it into an oracle, and then the oracle can put it on the blockchain. So could elections be on a blockchain? Yes, absolutely they could. And auditing what the votes were, 100%, 100%.
Well, I mean, what if we just bypass that?